Hey y'all, welcome to Soccer for Us. I'm Bart Keeler, and I am here today to talk about the group of players called by Greg Berhalter into camp for the first window of CONCACAF qualifiers for the FIFA World Cup 2022. It's a lot of words to say. We're here to talk about that September roster. It's finally here. I'm chatting with Caleb Cook today from USMNT Corner on Twitter. Caleb, thanks for coming back. Give me one word to describe how you feel about the USMNT right now.
Excited, honestly.
Fair enough.
Excited. If you're going on based on Twitter, I don't know if everyone would agree with that, but me personally, I'm excited. I'm pumped.
It is exciting. We have a World Cup qualifying roster, which means that World Cup qualifying is very close to happening. In fact, at the time of this recording, we are about 7 days and 3 hours 45 minutes from kickoff in El Salvador, in San Pedro Sula. No, that one's not El Salvador. In San Salvador, in Estadio Cuscatlan. That's where they're playing. Anyway, we're going to talk about all of the roster, talk about what we like, what we don't like, and kind of where we think Berhalter sees this team and how he sees this team playing. But before we get going, don't forget to subscribe to Soccer Down Here so you can catch every episode of Soccer for Us and the daily Soccer Down Here show. Also, follow the show on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. Now, Caleb, it has been 1,425 days since we got a new World Cup qualifying roster. That's almost 4 complete years. The last one we got was October 1st, 2017. I do want to take some time to just kind of reflect on the states of the program from that time in October 2017 to now. And I mean, specifically right now, the time where we got this qualifying roster back then and now, because October 2017, we had come off a September window where we lost to Costa Rica at home. I believe then we had to scrap out a draw at Honduras after that. And we had to get points, like a lot of points in this October window to just even get a chance to qualify. We didn't even know if that would be done on our own merit. To now, where we are looking at the start of the campaign, and we are looking at a team that just won 2 trophies in a summer. And I think the overall player pool, and especially on this roster, is very different and very much better, but also younger. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But just where do you what do you feel and think compared to where we were back October 1st, 2017?
I think it's hard to not feel a little bit more confident. I think we're going to go into this one with a few more questions answered. You got a lot more, I would say, locked in type players. The good thing is there's a few injuries coming into this, but with a lot of the important guys, there's, a nice little run of health right now, which is, there's nothing really you can do to prepare for that type of thing. It's just those things come and go. But sometimes you need to be lucky when it comes to that kind of thing. And I think having your important players all with a clean bill of health coming into this off the summer we had, like you said, riding that wave of confidence. I think you've got to be happy going into this, excited. And do you know if they've come up with some sort of way to, speed up time? Is that a thing?
I wish, right?
God, I cannot wait.
I remember that 2018 qualification cycle. And remember that back in 2016, we actually faced kind of a similar situation where we had to get a big win at home against Guatemala in World Cup qualifying. And I remember specifically, I was on the road. I was working as a traveling salesman, and I was in Jackson, Mississippi, getting ready for, at that point in time, I felt was the most important World Cup qualifying match, the most important match that the U.S. had ever played, because you had to qualify for the World Cup. And then October 2017 rolls around, and it's very much the same. And I was in the stands in Orlando to watch us absolutely thump Panama. And the entire time, okay, we got to win. If we don't, then this could happen. It could be bad. But like, there was never a moment of not thinking the bad thing would happen.
Right.
And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a preview pod for this window. But for now, I just want to remind U.S. soccer fans and listeners to this podcast that what happened in 2018, specifically 2017, what happened in that cycle is not the norm and was a confluence of a lot of terrible factors. Like, honestly, a lot of bad things happened. The roster, I still think, was good enough to get the job done. Do I think the guy who made bad decisions? Do I think some players probably should have been there that weren't? Yeah, but we were good then. We were still a good collection of players, and we weren't playing well. But you look at the players on that roster; they weren't the worst. I mean, don't get me started on a couple of guys like Dax McCarty and being, a guy that you're relying on to get you to a World Cup. But it was true then, and it's even more true now. U.S. soccer has a deeper pool of talent and a wider pool of talent to pull from than just about everyone else in the region. And that is tenfold true now. And I think that's where I am, where I know a lot of people are scared going into the octagon because the ghosts of 2017 are still there. And it's fine to have in the back of your mind the knowledge that it can happen. The bad thing can happen. But certainly we've learned from the bad thing. Certainly we've learned that the bad thing was a product of a lot of factors that we can control. And I think we've tried to correct some of that. I think that some issues and evils still exist, but this roster specifically is hella good. That's all I got is like, this roster is incredible compared to anything else we've ever had. And that should give people a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I think going back, talking about 2017, were we as good as we are now? Not even close. But we were certainly better than Panama, who ended up going. We were certainly better than Trinidad and Tobago, who ended up, giving us that final knockout blow. But like you said, a lot of things had to go bad. I would venture to say nearly everything.
Literally everything
could go wrong.
A goal was scored that wasn't actually scored. A goal was scored off of Memo Ochoa's back of his head. Yeah. Like, everything that went wrong that final day went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a perfect storm. So I think you're right with the disclaimer there. But at the end of the day, like you said, it could happen. But you got to really like the chances now. The talent on this roster is extremely exciting. Just the creativity that we have right now, I think I mean, it's hard to argue that it's not better than any other roster we've ever had. I mean, you look back at previous rosters and you could pick out 2-3 players that you would describe as a creative player. And now you look at the roster and you're looking at guys like Pulisic, Aronson, Weah, Conrad, Reyna. I mean, all of those guys are
we've got a defender who's a creative player.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Serginho Dest is probably the most creative player on the team.
Right.
So I think you're in a completely different conversation now than we were back then. I understand everyone's the boogeyman under the bed. I get it. But I think we can walk through I say walk through. I'm sorry. That's a poor choice of words. I think we can walk into qualifying with our heads held high, our chests out, and being extremely confident that we're going to get the job done. The first game we're going up against with El Salvador, let's not mince words. They are not a world power, nor are they a CONCACAF power. Everything, points to the fact that we're going to have an easy time, but we all know it's not.
We all know CONCACAF isn't easy.
Exactly. But I do, like I said, that said, I think we're going to be okay. And I think everybody knows that, but won't allow themselves to say that.
We've allowed ourselves to be so negative about everything that happens in U.S. soccer for 4 or 5 years. And I think we do have to put that aside for now to look at the positives. And the biggest positive is this roster. So let's talk about it. Greg Berhalter has put together a roster of 26 players. Reminder that only 23 are allowed on the match day squad. So 3 of these guys at any given time will probably not be, playing. Definitely won't be on a match day squad. That's fine. But you have 26 players. There was no limit to this roster. I do think that that's a tiny thing that I want to talk about because there wasn't a limit. And I find it weird that 26 is the number he ended up going with. But I will say that I understand a little bit why Greg kept it kind of tight because one, you don't want to have 70 players called in and you can't even run a training session, right? Like at some point you have to be like, no, I need to get my ones training with them. And I need, to have a very short depth chart because you need to have ones and twos. And after that, it's kind of like, okay, can a guy maybe play a couple positions? But this 26-man roster is pretty darn good. And I am excited. I think that's just the bare minimum that I have to say about it.
I think if you look at it from Berhalter's perspective, and you kind of try to be a little realistic about it, you think, okay, there are certain players that we'd like to see, but they're a little too young, unproven. He was never going to call those people in.
It's not an experimentation camp. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
this is not. This is. Yeah, I've seen a few people on Twitter saying, I wish this guy would have gotten a look. World Cup qualifying is not a spot where you give a guy a look, unless you have to. Right,
which the only guy who is new is a guy who plays a position where if you look down that depth chart, you go, crap, who's literally healthy?
Exactly. Exactly.
A lot of strikers are out. DK's out. Zardes is out. I don't know what other strikers really were available that were playing all that well. Aaron Johansson. But Ricardo Pepi is the debutant of the group, and very happy to have him. There's also the slight little game we're playing against Mexico to get these guys committed to the United States. But this is not supposed to be experimental, right? The Gold Cup was experimental, and some of those guys made their way onto this roster, and that was the point of the Gold Cup.
We had a lot of questions answered from the Gold Cup, but I think with the injuries, that's the other thing. Of the guys that realistically could have been called in, meaning they have experience, they've been a part of his system, et cetera, you had a lot of those guys injured, so that cuts the potential of guys being called in anyways. So I think that kind of dwindles his number down. And then you got guys who they might have been called in, but their club situation is kind of murky. I think Matthew Hoppe was a decent shout to be called in, but he's probably looking at a pending transfer here pretty soon. I mean, I hope so. I really would love to see him get out of the 2 Bundesliga. We'll see, but you never know with any of this stuff. And we're all speculating on a lot of things. At the end of the day, we've said it before, you got to give Greg credit. So far, he's not other than selecting rosters, which we're always going to disagree with certain things.
Everyone knows more than Greg Berhalter about
his final results can't really be argued with. So as of right now, until he makes a big misstep as far as what counts, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
All right, well, let's talk about this 26-player roster. We'll go through it real quick.
Let's do it.
After that, we'll give our takes. So goalkeepers, he had 3: Ethan Horvath from Nottingham Forest, Zach Steffen from Manchester City, and Matt Turner from New England Revolution. I don't think there are any surprises there. And I'm very happy that Brad Guzan was not called up.
He has been playing a lot better for Atlanta.
Oh, it has nothing to do with his form. I want him to stay in Atlanta and play.
There you go. Okay.
Defenders, I find it interesting he called up 10 defenders, the largest of any of the position groups. You have George Bello from Atlanta United, John Brooks from Wolfsburg, Serginho Dest from Barcelona, Mark McKenzie from Genk, Tim Ream from Fulham, Anthony Robinson from Fulham, Miles Robinson from Atlanta United, James Sands from New York City FC, DeAndre Yedlin from Galatasaray, and Walker Zimmerman from Nashville SC. Now, I don't think any of these guys are really surprises. Straight up. I'm disappointed that Tim Ream is still on this roster for the very specific example is Chris Richards. But the problem with Chris Richards is that he wasn't super healthy when we wanted to call him in for Nations League. Now he gets to training with Bayern Munich, and he's not really playing with them. He hasn't really played at all. Club situation, I don't think is in flux. I think it's very clear that Bayern want him at Bayern, just not playing. But I still think he would be a better option than Tim Ream because he is faster than Tim Ream, which is not saying a whole lot, but it is a fact that Tim Ream is slow.
It'd be one of those things where, you're closing out a game and you just say, hey, go defend for your life. And just because he is more athletic, he's going to be able to play that role a little bit better. The Tim Ream inclusion.
We will have time to talk about Tim Ream later.
Let's
want to wait for that.
Yeah,
it's. I have my pros and cons, my positive negatives, and my negative is definitely Tim Ream. I'm just saying. I'm not. I will say just quickly. I mean, you going through this roster and calling out their clubs. It sounds so cool. I mean, we're talking. Man City's in there already. Barcelona's in there already. God, I love it. Midfielders, Kellen Acosta from Colorado Rapids, Tyler Adams from RB Leipzig, Sebastian Lletget from LA Galaxy, Weston McKennie from Juventus, and Christian Roldan from Seattle Sounders. I'm not happy with Roldan. I think everyone knows that I'm not a huge Christian Roldan fan. I know that he had a decent Gold Cup. I'm not taking that away from him, and he is playing a really great season for Seattle. I'm not taking that away from him. I don't think he's really a dynamic player on a full senior national team. I don't even think he was very dynamic in the Gold Cup. I think he was just fresh legs and willing to run. So that's my take on Christian Roldan. But the other four midfielders are pretty good. My only question is only 5 midfielders. Mm-hmm. This is where I'm like, Greg, you had more. You could have brought 7. You could have brought 6. You could have brought 8. Yep. Why only 5 true central midfielders? That is a concern that I have.
Yeah, I think it points to a few different things. One being we're going to see several guys listed in other spots like forward and defense, James Sands, Rana, Aronson, stuff like that. A lot of these guys can move into the midfield depending on the shape that we're playing in. And then that's the other thing, the shape, right? I think a lot of it points to 3 in the back, playing like a 5-3-2. So, we'll see how it breaks down, but I think that's his rationale. And then, I mean, if he's playing Reyna in the midfield, half of Twitter is, they're gonna
love
melt
it
down and into puddles of joy.
Yeah, they won't have anything to complain about anymore. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please, yeah, right. Yeah.
All right, 8 forwards. 8 forwards called in: Brendan Aronson from RB Salzburg, Conrad De La Fuente from Olympique Marseille, Jordan Pefok from BSC Young Boys, Ricardo Pepi, the new guy from FC Dallas, Christian Pulisic from Chelsea, Gio Reyna from Borussia Dortmund, and Josh Sargent from Norwich City, and Tim Weah from Lille. So again, you hear those clubs come up: Olympique Marseille, you've got Chelsea, you've got Borussia Dortmund, you've even got Lille. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
I don't know how you could complain about anyone who's left out of this group.
Yeah, well, I'll say, talking about clubs, if you go back and compare it to the 2017 rosters and look at those clubs,
a little bit better.
We are in a much better situation now. But you've got to love that forward group
playing for their club, right?
Oh, that's the important thing.
It's not just that you're at Juventus or that you're at Barcelona.
Yeah, these guys are key components to these clubs. You got to love that, and then you got to love the names in that forward group. You've got to be excited about it. I mean, we're talking so much talent, so much creativity. Dangerous weapons. Brennan Aronson cannot stop scoring.
It's amazing, actually.
God, talk about I'm so ready for him to get a move. Ever since he stepped into the Austrian Bundesliga, and then now obviously he's doing it in Champions League as well, he can't stop producing. I've always said, if you are the best player on the field, you're on the wrong field. Find a field with better players.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see him get a move soon. But that's a different discussion.
It is encouraging because, like I said, I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, where is Matthew Hoppe?" And don't get me wrong, I thought Matthew Hoppe was a baller in the Gold Cup. But where does he fit in this group? Would he have been your number 9? That would have been a thought. But he also is coming off of a stomach bug, and he's not really settled in at his club either. So, I'm not going to be mad that Matthew Hoppe isn't here when you look at the other 8 guys and you're like, well, where does he fit over? Even to an extent, Ricardo Pepi, who's been in great form this year in MLS, it's like, well, how do you, argue not calling him up?
Well, that's the other thing I want people to understand is this is not the World Cup roster. This isn't it. Right. Like Matthew Hoppe is going to play a part. We literally do this
in a month. We do it again in a month.
Exactly. Matthew Hoppe is going to play a part in World Cup qualifying at some point. And he's very well could be on the World Cup roster in 22. We don't know. We can't see the future, but people are freaking out. Like this is just this, like this is it. Like here we go. This is our best 26 players in the entire pool. Like that's not it. And that's not what Berhalter's saying when he's selecting these players. He's not saying Christian Roldan is a top 25, top 26 player in the player pool. He's not an idiot. He knows that. It's based on all the things that we've talked about: injury, form, fitness, club situation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Experience with his system in his camps. All of those things he's taken into account. And this was the roster that he selected to get this job done in this window right here. And until he fails, would I have called all these players? Probably not. But I'm not going to sit there and lose my mind about it like some of these people on Twitter that are like, do they not have anything better to do?
Well, probably not.
Then complain? Yeah, probably not. You're right. Yeah.
I want to just talk a little bit about this roster, some interesting notes about it. So while this is a mostly young squad, and it very much is, 5 players on the roster have had 30 or more caps, and 15 have had 10 or more caps. So while it's young, it's not inexperienced. So I don't like the argument of, well, we have to have Tim Ream because of experience. We have to have this. We have experience. Now, granted, Tim Ream has like 45 caps, so that helps, and he's played in World Cup qualifying before. It helps. But the youth of the squad does not need to be confused for inexperience. So there's that. The midfield is the most experienced group, averaging 25.8 caps among the 5 of them. The total roster averages 18.1 caps per player. Only one guy has 0 caps. That would be Ricardo Pepi. The guy with the most caps right now is, did I get this right? That is DeAndre Yedlin. Yes, it's DeAndre.
Brooks, right? Yeah.
It's DeAndre Yedlin who has 64, which is weird to think because we haven't seen DeAndre Yedlin consistently for the U.S. in like 8 years, I feel like. 6 players in the group have played in World Cup qualifying before. The roster has 9 MLS players, 17 European-based players. Atlanta United has the most players on the roster with 2. Fulham has 2 more, but we're not going to talk about that. And of the European-based players, 10 of them play for clubs in the 2021-2022 UEFA Champions League. That's positive. All of those are positives.
It's not bad. That's not bad. I love it.
So I do want to ask you, give me 3 positives and 3 negatives. I'll do my 3 positives first. I think that this attack is the biggest positive. If we don't score like 27 goals over the 3 games, then I'm just going to be really upset with Berhalter and probably, rant about it for days. I'm kidding. But we better score goals because
Yeah.
this attacking 8, but whoever, the attacking 3 that are out there plus the midfielders should be able to score goals. So that's one positive, is the attack. Second positive for me is the defensive depth. Now, part of that is because he brought in 10 players, but I look at even, the right back, the left back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm confident that whoever plays at the fullback position will do pretty well in CONCACAF. I'm very positive, outside of one guy, that whoever plays as a center back will be just fine in CONCACAF play.
Yep.
And then my last positive is the goalkeeper union, because I think you can start any of those 3 and I'll feel confident.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Do you have any other positives to add to this from this roster? Just in general, or
I think so. So I alluded a little bit to the attack, right? I said it's really, really hard not to get excited about the forward group. I mean, just the names alone, the clubs they're playing at, the roles they're playing out for their clubs. I'm 100% with you. It's extremely exciting. I think that's a huge positive, and something it's not something we've had before,
No.
especially that much. Second thing, and I guess if we're ranking them, that's probably where I would say I'm most confident, the biggest positive. The second thing would be probably the ability that we're going to have in game. I say that Greg's going to have to be able to adjust tactically because of the players that we have. We have a lot of guys that are just, Swiss Army knives almost. Kellen Acosta, number 1, is probably the most versatile player we have right now. I mean, he can play the 6, the 8, right back, left back. I mean, if you needed to play striker, I guarantee you could.
He'll give it a go. He'll try hard.
He can play all over, and he's going to give you quality minutes. Saying that he's a Swiss Army knife isn't saying that he's the best player on the field. It's just that's an extremely important thing to have on a roster. So him, Sands, Reyna, Aronson, their abilities to drop into the midfield, the players' ability to interchange on the field, step into each other's positions, moving in space is going to be the ability to do that is something that, again, we've never seen. And I think that's a common thing. A lot of stuff that we're talking about is going to be firsts for us. I think we're going to be on the front foot. It's not going to be, playing and defending for our lives. Like, we are going to be, pedal to the metal, because I think there's a lot of players that the opposing defenders are they're starting to have nightmares about them. Some of these guys, they're thinking about, okay, I've got to defend Pulisic, Aronson, Reyna, Weah. Like, when has that been the case for the U.S.? When have we had players on our roster other than like a Clint Dempsey or and obviously I'm talking recent last 5 years. But when has that been the case? It hasn't. So that ability to change tactically, and then I think I'll echo what you said about the defensive depth. Yeah, there's 10 of them, but it's the quality. It's not like, okay, well, if John Brooks goes down, we're done. I mean, you've got Mark McKenzie, who's shown he's done it. Miles Robinson has shown he's done it. Zimmerman has been playing really well lately. I feel extremely confident. And then, like you said, there's one there that, I'm not. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that yet, or?
Nope. We still got more to go. We're talking about positives right now.
So weird. Okay, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry.
We have a whole section for negatives.
Okay, we got an entire section set aside. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think those are the biggest ones.
All right, so let us then. I mean, honestly, the positives I think far outweigh the negatives. I want that to be very clear.
For sure. Yes.
Roster is incredibly strong, and even the players that I'm complaining about still have been serviceable for the U.S. men's national team in their past.
Yep.
I still don't think that this team needs to fear anyone. I think that you look at this roster, and I would put this roster up against any team in CONCACAF and say, yep, that can go get 3 points.
Yeah, I agree.
And you look at this window ahead, it is the easiest window we have outside of the January, February window in 2022. This is a great way to start banking points. Actually, I'm looking at it now, and that October window might be a lot easier than this one, given how Panama and Costa Rica have been. But, you just look at this roster, this particular window, and the quality of teams, the quality of opponent isn't there. Your toughest opponent is the one at home. I like this roster to get the job done in all 3 games.
I think 9 points is absolutely the bar.
It's achievable. Let's just put it that way, right? It is absolutely achievable.
Yeah, the world's not over if it's not 9.
Right.
I think that's where they're putting the bar for sure. Right. I don't think they're sitting here thinking, hey, let's just try to get a point. I think they are going in there 100% looking for 3.
I think the issue, and I'll talk about this in the podcast kind of next week, previewing the entire window and kind of qualifying as a whole, but I don't think that the draw on the road, win at home is going to be just enough because of the amount of games. Now, because there are a lot of games, and you have 7 opponents, so that's just a lot more games, right? That's 14 games. That's 4 more than we had in any time before. That gives you more room for error, but that leaves more room for error. And so it's a double-edged sword where it's like, if you do lose on the road, it's not the end of the world. You have 13 other games to win points back. You can't lose at home. But if you draw at home again, just go with me here. If you draw at home, it's not the end of the world because you have an opponent like Panama on the road where why not go win there? So just keep that in mind where this is going to be a little bit different where I don't think that old mentality of like, hope you get a point on the road and win all your games at home. It's not going to work. That also screwed us over in 2016 or 2017, where that was our game plan, and we ended up playing for draws on the road, and for the most part got them until we needed them, and then that screwed us up when we lost at home. But I am very confident in this roster.
Well, I think it goes back a little bit to the positives you're talking about. I think if I can, I'm going to add one more.
Go ahead.
It would be the amount of confidence that this team has. This specific roster.
Everyone.
I mean, these kids, from club situation to the international experience they have under their belt now because of the Nations League and Gold Cup this summer. I mean, their confidence is so high. I don't think we've ever had a qualifying roster that is going down to a CONCACAF nation away with this kind of confidence. I think you're right. It's always been, let's play for a draw. And these guys, that's not their mentality.
Right.
And I think that's a huge positive. It's something, again, like I said, common theme we've never seen before. I'm going to get used to it. Just be honest with you. I think the talent we've got coming through, I think it is, but I think we're that guy now. We're that team.
Yes.
We're going to go in, we're going to get the job done, take care of business, and let's move on,
All but 2 players on this roster lifted a trophy this summer, and one of those was Walker Zimmerman, who got hurt while winning a trophy, and the other is Ricardo Pepi, who was, not really in the squad yet. So positives, there are many. Negatives, I have 2. Actually, I have 3. One negative that I do want to talk about is there's only 5 midfielders, and I know that we have Brendan Aronson and Gio Reyna, and even James Sands, who can move into midfield if possible, but only having 5 true midfielders to me is a little bit of a dumb decision by Berhalter when you didn't have a cap on the amount of people you could bring in. That is where I definitely look at it and go, there are some guys that I don't want to say they're snubs, but because I don't think they're making it.
But they could have been useful
here. They could have been useful in this roster. That's where
there's a good handful.
Yeah. So that's one negative. I just think the amount of midfielders brought in is a little not smart by Greg. The biggest negative, though, and I mean this with respecting what he has been able to do in his career and how long he's been playing in Europe at a pretty decent level, and the performances he's given the U.S. and the versatility he has brought. But Tim Ream is, I'm sorry, not up to it anymore. And we saw it very, very clearly against Switzerland and Mexico. And those were the two best teams that we've played in a very long time, especially that Mexico team. Those two teams were the best teams we played since, I mean, literally since 2017, right? He looked trash. I'm sorry. Like, it was a bad performance. And it wasn't like, oh, well, he had a bad performance, it's fine. And that, like, you could tell that the problems he had are not going to just get better. He's slow. He's old. He's not quick. He is not as aware as he needs to be. And he gets beat too high up the field in 1v1 situations. Those aren't going to suddenly get better. Now, that said, he's one of six center backs. Maybe he doesn't play at all. Like, I'm probably making a big deal out of the fact that he won't even play, right? But this is where I go, Greg, this is that self-fulfilling prophecy problem where, oh, well, he has experience, so I'm bringing him in, leaves out someone who could get that experience.
Right.
And I'm not discrediting experience. I think experience is important, but experience doesn't trump quality.
Yeah.
And I just don't see Tim Ream having the quality to play even at El Salvador or at Honduras or at home against Canada.
Experience is great, but it can also get beat 1v1. So when experience is slow, then, you know, is experience really that important? And I think that's where it's at. Experience. You know, I think
DeAndre Edlin has experience. Christian Pulisic has experience.
Berhalter looks at Tim Ream as someone who's, okay, hey, he's going to be a leader in the clubhouse. He's going to put guys under his wing. He's going to be a guy that he can trust not to make mistakes. I think that's his biggest thing is like, okay, I know I can put this guy in and he's not going to make mistakes.
But he does.
My thing is this.
That's the problem.
But I'd say, because everybody makes mistakes, his mistakes are things that you can't fix, which is speed. You cannot fix it. And he's lost a step. It is what it is. It's not bad. It's okay to say what it is. He's lost a step. Okay.
Yeah. And he's lost a couple steps.
Big time.
And he wasn't fast to begin with. That's the thing.
No,
right? It's not like he was I mean, he wasn't a fast, pacey center back. It's like, no, you never were fast.
The thing I think that Berhalter's looking at is maybe because you're going to have to give a little bit of rotation here. These guys aren't going to play all three matches. That maybe he's looking at it to where if we go down to El Salvador and they're going to be playing on their back foot, maybe you get away with playing him in that first match. That way you've got
that bothered me so much with that El Salvador matchup because they love to transition quickly.
That's all they're going to do.
Not counters because they love to have the ball in attack too, but they will transition quickly. And
they're gonna move that ball
not
really fast.
What he does.
And so, but if he's playing in, let's say he's playing the left center back position in a back three, is he going to be able to give a guy some rest early on so the Canada game and Honduras game, you have someone else who's fresh and can play two games. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of it because I can't really. I'm grasping here.
The only redeeming quality he has is the experience and the fact that he probably is a decent locker room guy, right? Like he knows what's going on. That's great. I am happy for him.
You can't argue with that. He's a great guy, and the guys seem to love him. You see the guys, I've listened to a couple podcasts. They talked about him.
It's the reason Ali Long went to the 2019 Women's World Cup, right? Yes. Like, I mean, sometimes just being a really good locker room presence will get you far.
It makes a difference.
But you're 33, which is a year older than I am, and I can tell you right now that it's not going to get better.
He's going to he'll turn 34 2 days before I do. And I'll tell you right now, from someone who's playing weekly, I've lost a step. And I I think I stay in pretty decent shape, but
Right.
I'm not the same guy I was when I was
Right.
26, 27. I'll tell you that right now.
Especially when you're talking about having to play 3 games in 7 days, the recovery and everything. So I don't know how you could play him a 90 minutes because I don't want my center backs having to be subbed out. I don't know how you play him 90 minutes and be able to play him the next game. Right.
I think it's safe to say, based on what we've just talked about and what I was trying to make sense in my brain and I couldn't, I think it's safe to say he's probably not going to play. But now that I just said that out loud, he's going to start all 3 games.
Of course. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, it could be one of those situations where he is just along for the ride, right? Like, maybe this is where you take advantage of the unlimited space and you go, hey, this is the Nick Raimondo being the 3rd goalkeeper throughout a lot of last cycle, which was good. He was a good guy. If you have to go in there, not the best, but like, hey, I feel pretty confident. Although I think Raimondo I had more confidence in him than Ream, but whatever. Maybe that's it. So I don't expect him to play because I don't see who he's better than. And I don't see situations where I go, yeah, I want him because even in the back 3 situation, put Miles on the left.
Yeah.
Or put McKenzie.
Brooks on left center back, Sands middle center back, and Miles right center back.
Brooks is in the middle. He's on his pace. There are permutations that don't involve Tim Ream.
Yeah.
And that could have been easier had Chris
Mark McKenzie can play on the left. Yeah, absolutely.
The one snub, I will truly say, the one snub on this roster, I think, is Chris Richards. And I think legitimately I would have called him in over Tim Ream. The other snubs, and we will kind of get to that list in a little bit, are not snubs in the same sense that we normally would think of. Because the snub for me is, okay, well, why not? This is no, I would have called up Chris Richards over Tim Ream.
The only thing I could say is if in the next, 5 days or 4 days, what is it, 26th? The transfer window's over the 31st, right? So if in the next couple of days, Hoffenheim finally, ponies up the money and they get Chris Richards on the transfer, then I'd say it was obviously something we didn't know about and they left him behind because of club situation. They want him to go ahead and make that transition real smooth. Maybe. Then I could understand it. If not, he's not playing at Bayern, so let him come play with the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
My other negative is Christian Roldan. And I don't know what Christian Roldan does better than other midfielders in the pool, other than he works really hard.
Yeah.
Is that a positive? Absolutely. Is that why he was a super sub in the Gold Cup? Yeah. And okay, fine. You have 26 guys bringing in a guy who you feel is a super sub. Greg Berhalter has said this. He loved the way he could use Roldan coming off the bench in the Gold Cup. Mm-hmm. Bruh, that's the Gold Cup. Now granted, the Gold Cup is the competition we're going to be facing.
It's the same,
octagon, right?
Yeah.
But you're it's a little bit like, I don't know. I don't think that he is the quality that I want on this team to be, and I don't think he has qualities that are better than other guys that could also play in a very similar situation. Mm-hmm. I'm very much thinking of Julian Green in this situation, but again, I don't know if they're necessarily that I would say, okay, call him up over Christian Roldan, because Greg clearly seems to like Christian Roldan, and Roldan was at least a positive influence on the games in which he entered for the most part during the Gold Cup. So I personally dislike Christian Roldan. I've never been a fan of what he provides at the U.S. men's national team level. I don't think it's anything where you go, yeah, we need that guy. It's okay. And
I've never seen anything positive from him in a U.S. shirt until this past Gold Cup, to be honest with you.
And
every
even
single
then, the
time.
Positives were just like,
the positives were, it was the fact that he accepted the role that Greg gave him. Right. And he's got a positive attitude. He works hard, like you said. It's important. But I think the important thing to think about here, or the perspective to have, is that this is the same competition that was in the Gold Cup. He showed that he can do it in that role. And so if you need someone to come in for 10, 15, 20 minutes, work his butt off, close out a game, he can do that. And it's not like if we were playing, or if we're going to the World Cup and we know we're going to start to play some of the world powers, I don't think he makes the roster. I think he makes this roster, and I don't think he makes Berhalter's roster. I think Berhalter calls him into this specific roster to do the exact same thing we saw him do at Gold Cup, and if he can do that, if he can do the role he did in Gold Cup in World Cup qualifying, then fine, because it was he did what he did. But yeah, it's.
But who's he going to come in for? That's my question. Is he coming in for? Because in the Gold Cup he came in for more attacking-minded players as a guy who was going to just come in and then continue to pester the other team, and that's great. But if you're telling me that you're going to replace Gio Reyna with
that's
Christian
the thing.
Roldan,
I don't want to see him
freaking Ream on the bench. Are you replacing Roldan for McKinney?
The parts where he struggles a lot to me is when he's in possession in our third. That's where I get scared, because he's not
have the ball on his feet. Yes.
Well, he's never been quick enough. But when he's high up the field and he is just pressing relentlessly, and he's got space to run into, he's looked fine. So if that's where he's going to be used, let's say we've got a 1-2 goal cushion, pull out a Pulisic, save him for 15 minutes for the next game, and let Roldan run his legs off.
Sure.
Then I can see it. But if you're pulling him off,
or Conrad at that position,
yeah, absolutely.
That's the problem I keep having. Is I'm like, but where does he fit in?
I don't see a Conrad doing the defensive work that a Roldan's going to do.
Oh no,
Aronson would. He is just
Tim Weah will.
And absolutely. But it's 3 games, really close together. You're going to need some squad rotation. He probably is not going to play a ton, but I say that knowing Berhalter, he's going to go with the experience. He'll play him over Conrad, to be honest with you.
I know, and that's what bothers me, because Conrad offers more than.
Like I said, as long as we get the results, though. If we get the results, I'm gonna.
I don't see how Christian Roldan starts, for one. I don't see whether he is a better replacement than anyone on the field at any given time, especially a better replacement than anyone who would be on the bench.
I think your wingers are Pulisic, Aronson, Weah, Reyna. Those are your 4.
And Conrad might not even make a 23-man roster. So
right. But that's the problem too. Those are your rotation.
Roldan would make the 23-man roster, because who else is going to play in the midfield?
Yeah, that's true.
So that's where, again, why did you only bring 5 midfielders? Because now you're relying on Christian Roldan and Sebastian Lletget.
I'm going to be honest. I would rather, if it came down to it and you needed someone to move in and play the 8, I'd rather have Josh Sargent play the 8 than Roldan.
I'd rather have Brendan Aronson fill in there.
Yeah.
I'd rather have Gio Reyna play in there. I'd much rather have Brendan Aronson and Weston McKennie be your starting 8s. That sounds hella fun to me. Actually, I'll be quite honest, and no one will like to hear this, but the idea of having Adams, McKennie, and Acosta as your 3 midfielders could be real fun, depending on the competition. I think that might be really good against Canada, where they're going to try to actually, if Canada tries to play through the midfield, because they have a couple of players in the midfield who are decent, that ain't going to work against those 3. And if they go over top, then okay, fine.
I just got really scared about the Canada game.
Don't be scared.
No, if
be respectful.
If Berhalter plays Ream against Canada,
no, he can't.
That's the only way that I would be scared.
He can't.
That's what I'm saying. Get him out of the way. Play him in El Salvador. I do not want to see him defending Dejan Buchanan and Alphonso Davies on the other side of the field. But still, the speed.
If I'm John Herdman, I don't care. I'm like, there's a Tim Ream. I'm putting Alphonso Davies.
Oh, yeah. Let him cut in on his left. Absolutely.
Yeah, be like, I don't know, man. Just go run past the old guy. See the guy with the long blonde hair? Go run past him. That would be. All right, let's stop with the negative because overall this is way too positive.
Yes, we've spent a lot of time on
but
negatives.
I do want to talk about the snubs. And again, I don't think we can call them necessarily snubs because for the most part, I don't think they would have been brought in over anyone other than Christian Roldan. And I did mention I would take Chris Richards over Tim Ream.
Yeah.
Flat out. But
I think we could call these situational subs. I think it's what we could call them.
Okay. Who else would you maybe brought in?
Because Julian Green obviously gets a shout. Luca Del Torre obviously gets a shout. Hoppy. I mean, there's a handful of guys. Chris Richards, we already talked about. Those are the guys. What is that? 4 or 5 guys right there. Those are the ones that really stick out, like right up front. You could get Shaq Moore, but again, you can explain most of those. So that's why I say it's a situational sub, or snub rather, versus just they're playing great, everything's perfect, and they still didn't get the call. To me, that's a snub.
I think Julian Green's the odds-on one where you look at him and go, Berhalter wanted to bring him up for the Gold Cup.
Right. Yeah.
Really, that's not an exclusion for why he wasn't here because he's been playing and training with Arthur Firth, and he's played okay for a team that's not great compared to their talent. But he can't control that. He's done pretty well.
Yeah. I think he belongs in the Bundesliga.
I think he's the one. Yeah, and hopefully someone sees that, right? Like someone says, "Hey, that guy could help us going."
Has Berhalter had a press conference about this roster release?
Not that
if he has, I haven't seen any quotes from him or anything like that. I would be interested to say because he's going to be asked about, especially Julian Green, Chris Richards for sure, Luca De La Torre probably. There's going to be several guys that he's going to be asked about, and I would really be curious to hear the explanations for that. Maybe there's things we don't know. Who knows? But yeah, I'm with you. Julian Green's probably he's probably top of that list.
Yeah, I think Luca De La Torre is a guy that people like in theory, but we haven't seen enough of him to know.
It's all speculative.
And even to his defense, the play where he plays Heracles is not a super awesome club and a super awesome league.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything wrong. Like it's better than a lot of players. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's been like a definitive. He's not a definitive, right? Now, I do think that he would be a better guy to call in over Roldan because he actually can move the ball forward from the midfield. But I don't make these decisions.
There's definitely some creativity there for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him in that little spurt in the camp. What was that? It wasn't Switzerland.
Here's the one that I don't think a lot of people have. 2 names that I don't think a lot of people have talked about. And one I think people will hate. Georgi Hilovich has had a really decent season for Montreal.
Yeah, and when Atlanta played,
but he hasn't looked good in the U.S.
Montreal. He surprised me because he's really silky smooth on the ball, and that shocked me because I hadn't seen him play club because I was never watching Chicago, and I don't watch Montreal now. So I didn't know because in the U.S. shirt, like you just said, he's never looked that great. That's all I ever saw.
Yeah.
But man, he was. I mean, some of the little slip through passes,
on set pieces. So
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. That's a good one. It's a good shot.
So that's one, and the other one, Tanner Tessman, man. I know he just got a move, but he's played for Berhalter before. He kind of fills that like 8-6 hybrid position that I feel could be a really good use in a group like this, where it's like, hey, if I feel like if I needed him against Honduras, that might be someone who can go out there and really dig in and be a workhorse against a team that is going to be very, very resolute in defense and opportunistic in attack. I don't know. So Tanner Tessman's one that I don't think a lot of people has really thrown out, but I'm hoping it's maybe just because of the new, like very new transfer to Venezia, and that he hasn't really played a whole lot for them. Maybe that's it. I do also think that, and I think this needs to be said, the guys who are not your locked in starters, right? And even maybe 1 through like 18, let's go with that. If you're a European guy, And Greg Berhalter is weighing calling you in on short rest, a long flight, having to have 3 games in 7 days versus an MLS guy who's literally already here.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have those issues during these cycles where it's like,
Yep.
That's where I think like a Walker Zimmerman, and granted,
Yeah.
I think he deserves it, but it's like, of course he's going to get called in over Chris Richards because he's here.
That's a great point.
He's literally in Nashville. So that's where I think, granted, maybe that's a reason Roldan is on this roster because he's in Seattle. He's already here.
If you've got a guy who can do the job and he lives right next door, why call someone who lives in 3 counties over?
Right.
I think it's a great point.
I don't think that it's necessarily like the only determining factor. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, if you think that you're 1 through 20, let's go with that, is like real set, right? Definitely 1 through 18, because you get, 17 players in a game. 17, 16 players in a game, right? 11 plus 5. You have 16 players total in a game. 1 through 18-ish. That, if anyone outside of that, might be that, not saying like, well, he's here, so we might as well. It's just, do you call in Luca De La Torre, who plays, I'm going to look this up, who plays, over the weekend, and he's going to have to get on a, their next game is Sunday, August 29th, which is the day that players are supposed to start reporting for camp. Heracles plays August 29th. So he's going to play that game, get on a plane, fly across the Atlantic to Nashville, where he'll not be able to do anything until Tuesday, maybe. That is a factor, because when your first game is a Thursday and you're probably traveling Wednesday, that might be a factor. So I do think that is a thing to consider when you launch grenades at Berhalter.
Right. But I think it's all
quality,
right?
Everything. Quality,
you've got to have because some of these European guys, they're in the same boat, but exactly what they're going to give you because they've done it over and over and over again. So you don't have that part of the equation. He has the travel plus the fact that he hasn't done it with the U.S. very often,
right?
Plus the fact that the league that he's in is not as high. So you have all those things in the equation that add up to what you're saying. So, and then another thing I will say is something that U.S. fans are going to have to get used to as our player pool deepens. There's going to be a lot of, well, how do you leave this guy out? How do you leave that guy out? I can only imagine being France, where you're calling in your 23 or whatever for a tournament, and you got another 23 players that are world class. I can't even imagine that, but it's a good problem to have. But I think you got to look at this window, the next window, the fact that you don't want to burn guys out, run their legs into the ground, overwork them. And then, like you said, with the whole travel thing, if there's guys right here that can get the job done, let them get the job done. Let these young guys stay in Europe, build confidence with their clubs. But it's just one of those things where we're trying to come up with answers to explain the roster that we're looking at, and we're not going to know the truth of it all. We're not going to know the actual reality. It's one of those things that we just try to make it make sense. And I don't know if we ever will.
It is at this point a luxury to have all these players that we can call in, because legitimately there was about 40 players that you could have called in for this camp. And all of them would have probably done varying degrees of good for the team. And I think that for the most part, and I do want to stress this, we're complaining about 2 guys.
Yep.
We haven't even talked about Sebastian Lletget.
Yeah.
Who, whatever, right?
Yeah.
2 guys we're upset about out of 26.
Exactly.
who might not even be on a match day roster, let alone play.
Yeah.
So that's the perspective, because like you've said throughout this, you look at the names of the guys top to bottom. Manchester City, Wolfsburg, who's in 10 guys play in Champions League. Barcelona's here. Chelsea is here. Juventus is here. Some of the Galatasaray, right? Like some of the biggest clubs in not only their country, but in Europe.
I'd love to know what World Cup qualifying roster in the history of the U.S. men's national team has ever had 10. Well, they've never had one that has. They've never 10. Had 10. I want to know what's the most that a U.S. men's national team roster has ever had.
It probably would have been for either 98 or 2002, when we would have had Claudio Reyna, maybe an overlap with John Harkes, maybe when he was still Premier League. I don't know when these timelines match up when they were playing.
But there's two or three, right?
Other than Brad Friedel and Casey Keller both playing in top 5 leagues as goalkeepers, and you can only have one of those.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of that. There just isn't.
And then here we are talking about one of the youngest World Cup qualifying rosters ever, and it is there. And there are 10 guys playing Champions League soccer.
Yep.
It's crazy. What a time to be a U.S. fan.
It's funny that you look at this, and Christian Pulisic has 38 caps. He's one of the most experienced guys, and he's only 23.
Oh, yeah.
It's insane. That's great. Couple of questions before we get out of here. One, how many times do you think a 3-man back line makes an appearance, a legitimate 3-man back line makes an appearance during this window?
Honestly, very possibly all 3 games.
Okay.
Knowing Greg, I would say I think we would see a 4-3-3 against El Salvador, maybe a 3 back line versus Canada. But I just, based on the roster alone, regardless of opposition, it just lends itself to that back 3. But I know he's going to want speed on the wings, protection against Canada for sure. I mean, Buchanan and Davies flying at you is that's some serious heat right there. So maybe you go back 4 on that one.
My concern with the back 3 against Canada is you still have a striker who's pretty darn good, and either Jonathan David or Kyle Larin. You might have 2 of them. They might play together. Who knows? So I don't know if a 3-man back line is necessarily the best option against Canada.
Depends on who they have, if they're all healthy.
Yeah. Well, they called up Larin and David. So they called them up. So, yeah, you're right. Who knows what that situation will be by then. Yeah. I could see a 3-man back line working really well against Honduras, a team that is going to sit deep and going to, again, it's not a bunker. A bunker means you only care about defending.
Yeah.
They are going to sit deep so they can absorb pressure and try to be like the Black Panthers suit and release pressure and power coming off of that. So that might be one where I definitely see a 3-man back line, because you could have 2 pacier center backs like Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman, able to clean up the mess behind the midfield, who's pushed so high up. Yeah. I definitely think we see it in a starting formation. It wouldn't be surprising if one of the games, specifically Canada, depending on how Berhalter reacts to what John Herman does for changes, it wouldn't surprise me if we see one of those in a later stage of a game, because you could that also then becomes, the 5-man back line if you're trying to kill off a game against Canada, or you've got a couple goal lead in Honduras or El Salvador, and it's like, it's 80 minutes in, we're up 2-0, we're good. So I do think it makes an appearance.
Honestly, I think real quick, I think it's something that was kind of experimental, but now with going through Nations League and going through Gold Cup, and we've seen it a lot, it's something that it's not, because I remember what it was the Northern Ireland game, when it was like the first time we had seen the back 3 with Berhalter, and at that time it was like, can we do this? But then through Nations League and Gold Cup, it is very much a part of our bag. Yeah. That's why I don't think it's going to be crazy to say we see it
I don't want to take too much
often.
tactically from Gold Cup because I think that we did what we had to do with the players we had available. But the fact that we've had a lot of it, Berhalter has coached a 3-man back line a lot makes me confident.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know if necessarily that's what he wants to do from now on. I just think we can, and based on what was available and the roster we have,
it gives the other team something to look at on tape.
Yeah, absolutely. What are we gonna throw at them?
Is important.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great point.
Second question of these 3 questions to get out here. Second question. Do you think we see Gio Reyna or Brendan Aronson in the midfield at all?
I think so, and I can't remember who asked him. Someone asked Berhalter, and he said he didn't confirm it.
He didn't say
no. Yeah, his answer was it's a definite possibility. There's a lot of guys that can play in different roles, so I think that kind of lends itself to the fact that at some point we might see that. Reyna's definitely shown he can do it.
I wonder. The only thing I wonder about that is, and this is a conversation that has come up, is when you have such overlapping fullbacks that tucked your wingers in a little bit, and that can crowd the space there. But I wonder if that's where you see it again in a game like against Honduras specifically, where you're just trying to get more bodies up there to unlock a defense, and that might be useful. I think Aronson has a higher chance to play in the midfield than Reyna, because I think Reyna doesn't have a starting spot that's guaranteed. Or Aronson doesn't. So Reyna's starting spot pretty much is that right wing position. And I think Aronson might come off the bench for a guy to play in the midfield, might come off the bench to play for Pulisic on the left or even Reyna on the right. So I think Aronson might actually have a better chance to play in the midfield, but I'd love to see Reyna play as one of our 8s.
Yeah.
Last question. And that's just, I don't know if we have an answer. Who captains this team? Not who do you want? Who do you think is the captain of this team? Because Berhalter has not had an actual locked in captain, right?
Yeah, he's passed that band around a lot. There's to me there's a few guys that you can't go wrong. Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, John Brooks. Those 3 guys, you can give them the armband, and they are emotional leaders, vocal leaders on the field. By the standard they set with their play. They just jump out to me as captains. But we've seen with Berhalter, he'll just I don't know if it's something based on training that he sees or what, but we've seen tons of guys wear the armband. So, but I don't know if there's a guy. I don't think it
matters as much for a national team to have one guy who's your captain. I think it matters in a club team where you're this guy is our leader, who's the guy.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think when you have a camp like this, it's no, you need to have that guy. You need to see who is the guy who's the leader of this group, right? I just want to see some consistency. I think Adams and McKennie are good shouts. I don't think he'll play enough, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's Sebastian Lletget.
Yeah.
I'll tell you 2 guys who I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be Zach Steffen because I'm not a huge fan of goalkeepers being a captain on the field. I don't want it to be Christian Pulisic.
Right.
Don't need that.
I'm with you.
I don't want him to be that.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I've never been a fan of Pulisic as the captain. He is a emotional leader at times, and he can be with his play, but he is not the
I don't want Joseph Martinez to be the captain of Atlanta United, but I want him to be the mental, the emotional and quality leader of the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he yells at the team, they're going to listen, but he doesn't need a captain's armband because I don't need him with all that extra stuff.
Yeah.
I need him to worry about scoring goals. I need Christian Pulisic to worry about curling balls into that far corner. I don't need him to worry about talking with a teammate or a referee.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if it's me, I'm giving it to Tyler West or Brooks. Berhalter, what do I think he's going to do? I'm just going to be honest and say that I have no clue.
I don't either. I generally don't because we've never had.
Yeah, exactly. We don't what precedent do we have to say, oh, he's going to do this? But But I do know Adams has expressed interest in it. Brooks has expressed interest in it. So if he goes based on what they say,
I would be okay with John Brooks doing that.
He's, like I said, he's talked about it before.
Yeah.
So we'll see if Berhalter's listening, then maybe that's what we see. But I don't know.
Well, Caleb, thank you for joining me on this episode of Soccer for Us to kind of react to the roster that dropped today. 26 guys will be representing the United States men's national team as we kick off the Octagon CONCACAF qualifiers for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. I'll tell you the schedule. So U.S. plays on Thursday, September 2nd in San Salvador, El Salvador at 10:05 p.m. That kickoff. It's a late one, but that's actually a positive. That is a positive. I would rather be playing late at night in Central America. A little update, fans will be allowed in the stands, but they have to be vaccinated. So not sure, one, the number of fans and the veracity of their fan base. I don't think it'll be as intense as normal. That will be on CBS Sports Network and Paramount Plus, as well as Unimas and that channel listing. Then Sunday, September 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern, they will take on Canada at home in Nashville. I will be there. Caleb, are you going to be there?
Not yet.
Okay.
We've talked about it. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it. We're moving into a new house, so probably not, but I might see what I can talk my wife into.
I will be there. Then we will close out the window on Wednesday, September 8th at Honduras in San Pedro Sula. That will be another 10 p.m. kickoff, 10:05. All of these are some streaming form on CBS Plus. Oh, the home game is on Fox Sports 1. That is for sure. Fox Sports 1 gets the game against Canada. But if not, they're on CBS or one of the Univision channels. So it may be 2DNA, it may be Unimas, it may be Univision. Late starts, sleep schedule not going to be great after this, but we're in it for the long haul, and I'm excited.
Yeah, we made it through the women's Olympic games. So if we're talking about sleep schedule,
going to bed early is going to be a lot better than having to wake up at a terrible time.
So that killed me. Took me a week to recover.
Yeah, same. Everyone, go follow Caleb on Twitter at USMNT Corner. At USMNT Corner. You can follow him on Instagram as well, USMNT Corner. And you can follow our show at Soccer for Us Pod. Make sure you subscribe to Soccer Down Here to get every episode of every content within that network. Caleb, thanks for joining me. And everyone else there, thanks for listening. We have some real meaningful matches. We've had a really good summer. Yes. Let's hope it continues into the fall. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.